Colin, can I start?
Yes, you can start. It's ready to go, and we are recording this.
Okay, wonderful. All right, good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. Once again, my name is Irina, and I'll be more than happy to spend this hour of the webinar and share with you our best practices in the green architecture. Particularly, today's presentation is going to be specifically addressing the issue of design, installation, and maintenance of the living walls. Well, you probably heard different terms used throughout, you will see throughout our conversation as well as in the literature. So some people call them living walls. Some people use the term green walls. We call them vertical gardens. At the end of the day, we do them all, and I'll be more than happy to share our experience through this presentation. Well, first of all, we certainly understand that the new normal puts creates a little bit of a different format for us to share this information. But initially, of course, when we do a class, I would ask you a question. Do any of you actually have tried installation of the living walls? Question number one. Question number two is, what is your experience of applying living walls in your designs and in your projects? And the third question is, how do you see the world around you, why clients are hesitant to use the vertical gardens in the future projects? All right, so today's program is going to be split into 6 components. So first of all, I would like to share with you some of the latest trends. And one of the conversations that I want to bring to this presentation is definitely why we think Miami is the ideal place to actually implement the vertical gardens in the projects compared to any other locations in the world, compared to any other states in the United States. The second part devoted to a spectrum of the projects where the living walls can be applied. Then we will proceed to applications and what makes those applications successful. Finally, the biggest component of this presentation is going to be devoted to 2 different living wall systems that we have experienced since 2013, and we know that they work the best in the conditions presented in this specific climate. And I will conclude my presentation with some of the best practices to show you examples that have been installed and have not been given us any headaches since 2013. Finally, if you do have questions, like the moderator has announced, there is a chance to ask your questions at the end of this presentation. All right, so let me inspire you with some of the world trends that we are facing right now. So if you have if you ask the general question, who actually set the trends, I want to brief you a little bit of where the living walls are coming from and where they are now being popularized in the world. So the living walls have originated in France. All right, so the idea behind living walls is certainly to create very comfortable and cozy environments in the places where you want to have greenery, but you are limited in space. The second purpose was definitely to camouflage ugly walls. And this was the primary 2 uses of the living walls. So the founder of the technique, Patrick Blanc, who is from France, his living walls are now almost 30-year-old. So this is the trend originated 30 years ago. If we take Europe, the second country that is very, very high on use of living walls now is Spain. Now shifting to the North America is, you will be surprised, but a lot of companies are starting their business introducing different living wall technology in Canada. And in Canada, a lot of things originated from hydroponics, and a lot of things originated from agricultural trends. So United States, I would say we are picking up the trend, but we're still a little bit behind. There's a lot of companies which are doing it in Mexico, in Brazil, and now moving to Asia Pacific, of course, China, Australia. But my favorite, and this is what I want to share with you, is the region of Southeast Asia, which is Malaysia and Singapore. So this is an example, oops, sorry. This is an example of actually it's called Forest City. Forest City, and I personally visited this site. It has not been built yet, so it's not completed to 100%, but when I was there 2 years ago, they actually completed several buildings. So this is an example of the mega city, which is going to be an independent on its own, and the usage of the green walls, green spaces is tremendous. So this particular example sets a whole trend for the green architecture. And to get you more inspired, I want to show and share with you the latest project which has been introduced. It is completed in Singapore. Surprisingly, you might be thinking that this is a botanical garden, but this is not a botanical garden. It's a public space, which is the addition to the existing airport, Singapore Airport. So this addition to the Singapore Airport is called Changi Jewel. And I would like to show you a little presentation about it, just to get you excited about the use of the living walls. Let me try to share the screen.
Singapore's Changi Airport has already snagged the title of world's best airport for 7 years running, and its newest expansion is only tightening its grip on the title. In April 2019, Changi opened up Jewel, a lifestyle hub for the airport. The donut-shaped building sits between the control tower and Terminal 1. It took more than 4 years and $1.25 billion to build the glass and steel dome that makes up Jewel. Part luxury mall and part indoor rainforest, here's a look inside the complex, making layovers more fun. Built on what was once a parking lot, Jewel now covers 1.46 million square feet. It stands 10 stories tall, with 5 stories below ground and 5 above.
It's huge.
280 shops and restaurants circle the perimeter of the glass dome. There's a multi-screen IMAX theater, a full-size supermarket, and a hotel. In the middle of it all is the rain vortex. A cascading funnel of water drops 7 stories through the core of the building. At over 130 feet high, it's the tallest indoor waterfall in the world. All the water is harvested from rain and recirculated through the waterfall 24/7. At night, it keeps running and acts as a canvas for a 360-degree light show projected on it. Surrounding the rain vortex is a 4-story indoor forest. Singapore is known as a city in a garden, and the airport wanted to capture that theme at Jewel with the Shiseido Forest Valley. More than 900 trees and 60,000 shrubs from around the world make up the tiered gardens. And of course, there are walking trails. They're open 24/7 and they run through the gardens past waterfalls. The airport suggests allowing a half hour for each trail, but maybe allow more time based on these crowds. Don't feel like walking? The SkyTrain weaves through the forest as well. And just because it's still an airport, there are early check-in kiosks and
All right, yeah, the video continues, but I think we can I tried to make my point showing you a couple of things that can inspire you. So all of this is man-made garden under the roof, considering that the actual Singapore, the city of Singapore, which is its own country, smaller than Miami-Dade County in size, and have the same, pretty much almost the same climate as here. So people not only enjoying the nature outdoors, but as well as indoors. And all of it is man-made. All right, so where do the living walls actually, where are they used? So the same applications are applied in pretty much four different scenarios. So the first one is obviously the living walls that is the focus of today's presentation. The second one, as you can see, is the living sculpture. This is the latest trends, and I will show you more. The tower gardens, so growing food in the hydroponic system, and as well as a much more basic and fundamental way of growing and covering with greens using trellises. So what are the primary benefits of the living walls? The first benefit is definitely the trend, the climate change and the requirements for the reduction of heat. The living walls actually resolve some of that issue. So with the help of the living walls, there is definitely an application. It's an application to reduce urban heat effect. The beautification of the space and the environment that you can create, especially if you have very dense construction. Air cleaning and generation of oxygen, especially for interior applications. Increasing building thermal performance, so it does use, the living walls are used as insulation, as well as noise insulation. And increasing property value at being green, becoming a green building, and enhancing human health and well-being. So you might ask, again, Miami is one of the cities which has the very, very high potential to utilize these applications, but unfortunately we don't see them much around, but I think it's just a matter of time. So in the world, where is this living wall trend is actually going? Again, it's a surprise for some of you. It could be a surprise for some of you, but it is actually going into the direction of the art form in entertainment. So I want to show you a couple of examples. So this is where you see the big Emirates Airbus. This is an example of the largest sculpture, living wall sculpture. So the entire aircraft is literally one living wall made of live plants. And imagine if Dubai, which has a desert climate, can handle this kind of projects. I mean, I'm sure Miami with 365-day predictable weather can do something as well. Another picture on the top right corner, this is an example of living walls in casino environment. This is example from Las Vegas Aria Casino. And the bottom right corner is the picture of the sculpture, living sculpture. This is a dragon, which is one of the 15 sculptures which annually introduced in the Atlanta Botanical Garden. I take my time, and I don't know how it's going to be now, but I always went to see their new collection. So this year they're kind of repeating what they had last year, but this is something that the living walls are used in order to serve the purpose of entertainment. All right, so let's talk about the applications that the living walls can be used for. So definitely the first example is the traditional living walls. This is an example of our installation in the courtyard. You can also do the living columns. And finally, number 3, you can do mobile freestanding living displays, which can serve as dividers, presentation backdrops, office dividers, etc. So in this case, the irrigation will be set up at the base or behind the wall in the water tank. and the irrigation will be, again, this as in all our living walls, it will be automated, and it's just going to be within the system, recycling the water. So Miami Vertical Garden, as has been mentioned previously, we've been doing this for the last 7 years. The company originated from landscaping business, so we are very knowledgeable on plants. And once we started putting our mission together, we were trying to test different products available on the market in order to come up with the perfect solution for this specific climate. And I will be mentioning the climate, very important aspects of climate, specifically Miami climate, later on, to show the difference why certain applications work best here. All right. So if you would have answered the questions at the beginning of my presentation, what brings certain concerns for you not to introduce the living walls in your projects? In many cases, I get 2 basic answers. Answer number 1 is people consider that the installation may cost, the cost of installation is very high. And the second rejection that I would hear it, then I would probably put it as number 1, is the maintenance. So a lot of people may be misled, especially with some explanations from alternative suppliers, is that living wall does not require maintenance. This is absolutely not true. The question is, what kind of maintenance the living wall will require? And the answer will depend on the system. So this is an example of failed projects. As you can see, you're absolutely right that you do have concerns if you have invested so much money into this beautiful feature, and in 3 months it's gonna turn to something like this. This is definitely a sign of failure. So in this presentation, I will show you what are the critical elements to understand before you make a final decision of the system. So there are 5 major key success factors when you're considering living wall project, and all of these have to be addressed before you sign up for going forward with the installation of the living wall. So the first one is the growing medium, which primarily depends on the living wall system. Later in the slides, you will see the difference between different systems, and you will understand what are the consequences of using either of those. The second factor is irrigation. Again, there are several types of irrigations that can be used in the living walls, which make big difference as well. As a matter of fact, irrigation is the most critical component for living wall. The difference between setting up irrigation for a regular landscaping versus a living wall is very big. There's a very big difference. Because imagine if you are doing irrigation on a horizontal surfaces, yes, the water is going to be distributed somehow, the roots find its way. However, in the vertical environment, the simple force of gravity makes the water just drip down, straight down. Nothing is gonna go to the sides, and therefore uneven distribution of the water in the horizontal surfaces create a big drawback and may result in failure of certain systems. The third factor is lighting. Lighting is also another element which is very critical, especially for the interior installations. Some people say, oh, you know, I have a pretty light room. It's good. It has a lot of windows from floor to ceiling, but this is not enough when you are deciding on the interior installation. The lights that are used for the living wall installation are special lights. We'll discuss that because it's not, the light does not serve the purpose of decorating the living wall. It does have a purpose of helping plants to grow. Plant selection is the key. Again, we will be talking about this. And finally, the maintenance. All right, so let me show you a little bit of perspective what happens to the living wall throughout the years. And this is an example of our first installation and how it looks and after 7 years. So we installed it in December 2013. As you can see, it's already immediate effect. It has immediate cover, so it's not like it has to grow for a long time to make beautiful presentation, to become a beautiful wall. Moving on to the right top corner, it's August 14, and so the wall is being trimmed, okay? And you can see the difference. Then 3 years later, and now 6.5 years later, this is how the wall looks now. You can see a person, this is actually my partner, his name is Victor. So this is the second founder of Minor Vertical Garden. He's our technical director. So we do have videos where you can literally, if he reaches out to the base of the wall, his hand, you cannot really see his hand at all. So it's very, very, very deep into the wall, and it's lush, and we do not replace a single plant. All right. Why we really think that this conversation is of importance specifically right now. First of all, what I would like to share with you is that living walls, if before they were unknown animal and you had to really be either a trendsetter or a person who will take high risk, right now we know a lot to tell you and to answer all your questions and concerns. So first of all, the living walls can be integrated into the project and at any stage of construction or renovation. So I'm getting proposals done, and of course I'm doing the jobs done, whether it is in the pre-construction stage where you already have this on the plans, or it can be renovation work, or it can be existing building. So there's always a way to do a living wall at any phase of construction. Number two, collaborative design approach. So we certainly work with the designers and architects to decide how we're gonna connect the living wall with the irrigation, because all living walls that we do, they're fully automated, and therefore we have to configure if we can connect to the water source directly. That's certainly one example. If we cannot, then we will find a way to do it with the built-in water tank. So in this case, the irrigation will be recycled irrigation. Number three, again, with the proof of all our projects, we believe that living walls are sustainable features of the architecture. It's water and energy efficient. I'll just give you an example. This is a living wall of almost 400 square feet. You may be asking, like, okay, how much water, electricity I'm gonna spend to actually keep it sustainable? And I can tell you this particular size only requires twice a week, 5 minutes a day of the water. That's it. And you will know why this is the case in a few minutes. Irrigation with precision, this simply means that, just to kind of add to my previous point, is that you do not expect that the living walls have to be constantly watered to be in this shape. Living walls are very flexible, so there's custom designs. As I showed you previously, it can be flat, it can be column, it can be even different shape, and it can even take the shape of the sculpture. Depending on the interior, exterior application, sun exposure, there is a big variety of the plants that can be used. And I do believe that this is one of the advantages of the living walls. When I hear the words, oh, we use in our designs, we use Florida native plants, I think this only creates a drawback, and which can be overcome with the living walls, because living wall is more controllable installation. We decide what kind of plants will grow into it because we control the water and we control the light. So with the technology that is available right now, and I'll show you what I mean by that technology, remote monitoring, you will see how this can be achieved. Again, maintenance procedures, depending on the size of the installation. Let's say you have a very small manicured installation, you can have only one visit a month is sufficient to have a very, very manicured living wall. As well as on a bigger scale, the maintenance can be only once every 3 months. Innovative remote monitoring and control, there is special equipment that is now being used to monitor the living wall and immediately react to lack of water or the need for the moisture. And that's also going to be mentioned. And as a result, minimum plant replacement rates and therefore minimum costs. So once it's already established and adopted, you really literally do not touch the living wall except pruning and trimming and pest control, as long as the irrigation system is not being interfered with by the third party. Okay. All right, so let me switch to the actual systems that are being used in the design of the living walls. All right. So if you shop around, or if you have shopped around, you probably already have seen all different types of modifications of the living wall systems, but all of them can be classified into 3 major categories. So if we're going from left to right, the first category is the pocket-based living wall systems. The second one is tray-based living wall systems. And finally, the third one is hydroponic living wall systems. So the primary difference, as you can see, the pocket-based, it's typically different layers of material. In most of the cases, material is felt, wool-based felt, which allows the air penetration as well as the moisture for the roots to grow in the pockets. Okay. In most of the cases, pockets are filled with soil, and I will explain later what difference we make in terms of making it more sustainable for the tropical climate. In the tray-based system, there's a variety of tray-based systems, starting from single lawn trays and finishing up with individual cups and planters, where plants either grow in the cell, or they grow in the tray, or they grow in their individual container, but then they are laid in the planter where consistent stagnant water is being accumulated, and somehow the plant is supposed to get water through the little hole at the bottom of each planter. So let me explain why hydroponics. All right, have you ever thought, do you think there would be, if you would have been a gardener, okay, and you think, okay, I'm gonna do the same practices of creating, planting, growing, whatever plants I want, not thinking about the living walls, the same way as I would do in Minnesota. I don't know why, I mean, Minnesota is something just popped up in my brain. California and Florida. Of course, you're gonna have different considerations simply because of a different climate. So look at the map here, and you will see that Miami is zone 1A, right? We are equivalent to such locations as US territories, right? As Guam, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and US Virgin Islands. On the international scope, right? And I pointed out Florida, specifically Miami, the South Florida, right? We are privileged to enjoy the climate, which is called subtropical. I mean, it is a tropical, it's a category of tropical climate. So don't you think that this is logically has to bring your attention to the fact that whatever systems are used, let's say up north, not necessarily, I mean, yes, they can work, but why do you think this is something that has to be skipped as a fact when somebody is offering you a system, let's say of trace, if in their climate, they do not expect plants to grow for 7 years. They are expecting seasonal changes of those plants, because they know that over winter, those plants are gonna be gone. Maybe some of them will remain, but you have to replant the living wall seasonally. In our case, Miami is such a unique climate zone for all of us to enjoy and not to get into the systems which are fine for northern parts of the United States. So I'll give you example of what is called soil-based living wall systems. So if you look at the picture on top left, so this is an example of the tray, plastic tray, where you have individual containers with plants, and I put an analogy at the bottom. So it's literally, it's a vine rack. So it's not the living wall, it's just a presentation display where plants are gonna be sitting in its individual container. Nothing is gonna intertwine with each other. The roots are not gonna go anywhere but sit in its individual cup. So my question to you, how long do you think that plant will last? My answer, it will last 6 months, maximum to 2 years as any indoor plant. Look at the example on the right side. This is an example of the recently built living wall in Hard Rock Casino, in Seminole Hard Rock Casino. They've done very, very big installation on the scale of this city. It's probably, it is the largest living wall in Miami right now. And look at the outcome. So again, each individual container has a plant. The plant already is dying, okay? So warning, let me now explain what makes a difference if you have soil-based applications versus hydroponics. Okay, so I will show you 2 alternative systems. So one is Hydroponic Pro and one is Wrap Pro. So what we have been using for the last 7 years is the panel-based application, which is hydroponic application. Hydroponic means that there is no soil. The panel contains different layers of sponges, and the plant grows into the sponge. So let me ask you a question. How do you think on the vertical surface, if you have a drip line with water throughout your installation, and the water drips into the tray, container, or individual plastic cell, versus if the water drips to the sponge, how do you think what will be, in which case the water will be distributed more evenly and throughout the vertical surface? The answer is obvious. The answer is in the sponge. So just to show you more, this is an example how the panels, standard panels 3 by 3 feet, so they interlock with each other. They have plastic shell, so there is no penetration of any moisture with the actual wall. The panel is mounted on the J brackets. They interlock with each other, creating seamless canvas for us to plant, and not being, it's a completely self-contained system. So this is an example of the drawing. And as I will be showing you more pictures, you will see how that works. But each panel has the irrigation line on the top. So that means that every 3 feet, we do have irrigation line. The second system is what is called pocket-based sphagnum moss panel. So even though it is a fundamental way to do living walls, which is pocket, and you can see that the pockets are mounted, the panels with the pockets are mounted as any expected living wall as a panel. the biggest difference that is achieved in this particular application is done through two things. Number one, what is inside of that pocket? So the answer is that inside of that pocket, there is no soil as well. So that's why it's hydroponic system. So the filling or the growing medium that is inside of the pocket is sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss is the moss that is used for orchids, okay? And it is a natural material which doesn't decay, doesn't smell, and doesn't rot. So what happens is that it becomes a natural sponge which absorbs the water. So the plant, in both systems, when we take the plant out of its original container, we take the soil off and wrap with the sphagnum moss and put it into the pocket. With the time, not only the roots of the plant wrap the moss and intertwine around, they also penetrate throughout the pockets with each other, and that makes a big difference. Difference number two is the irrigation. Instead of having a drip irrigation for this system, because the goal of the living wall irrigation is to make sure that the vertical surface is evenly get moist, right? The irrigation that is used is called sweat irrigation. So in the case of sweat irrigation, you have a completely different distribution of water, which is distributed evenly on the vertical surface. And this is how the panel looks. So again, as in the first case, we have a J brackets which are directly attached to the wall. Then you have several layers of the actual panel, and the plants are growing into the pocket. All right, so this is an example of how we would typically approach any project. So we do, and this is one of the key differences that is done in our business model, is that we pre-plant the panels in our nursery. So we have a nursery, and then we do not spend any time on site. So we bring already adapted and pre-grown material in the form of the panel to the actual installation site. The difference that is made by making it this way is, number one, is the plants already adopted and they have ingrown into the system. And number two is that we do not require much time on site. So we reduce that time. Pretty much, there are two visits. We have to set up the hardware first, and then we bring pre-planted panels. So I'm just going through some examples. This is also a pocket-based system where we used, which we use for columns. Okay, so we just covered two systems. So we answered the first question, hydroponic living wall systems, that's what makes the difference. Now we have four more elements. We need to understand the irrigation, we need to understand lighting, plant selection, and remote monitoring. So let's go to irrigation. So in the irrigation, you have two choices. The first one is open loop irrigation and closed loop irrigation. So in the open loop irrigation, you have direct connection to the water source and drain. And in the closed loop application, we have a water tank typically at the base, even though it can be placed anywhere, like for example, behind the wall, etc. But typically, as you can see at the base, this is when the water is recycled within the system. As I already mentioned, drip irrigation versus sweat irrigation. As you can see on these installation images, and you can see the line, the irrigation line is sticking out of each panel every 3 feet. So those interconnected on the side. This particular example is a drip irrigation for the first system, but for the pocket-based system, we use sweat irrigation. The equipment box, just to show you example of the setup. For example, in the interior application, it's typically camouflaged in the cabinet. It can like this is a interior living room. So they have 3 sections of the living wall. So the irrigation is in one of the cabinets. If it's exterior application, it is done on the side, but it's definitely independent and separate from any irrigation landscaping applications. If you have more questions about irrigations, we can discuss it. So I have an image about that, how it's set up. Now, lighting. Okay. Just to show you example of like a little comparison of what lighting for living wall means in the context of different applications. So if you have a typical office, it does require, you kind of use 30-foot candles. In the supermarket, you have 50. In the basketball court, you have 100. The successful living wall requires 150 foot candles of light, which is equivalent, which is equivalent to pretty much 10 to 12 hours of light, besides the natural light, which you may think comes through your windows. So the way how this light is being, and this is definitely a choice. It is recommended for all interior applications. However, one of the solutions is to minimize the light is through the plant selection. So if you do not expect any plants to rebloom, like this example of one of our initial installations, this wall is 6-year-old. It's reblooming. All those anthuriums, you can see that they're blooming like crazy. So the idea is that if you do not expect any blooms in your wall, you can certainly go with very low light plants. That's also possible. But for the entire spectrum of choices, the light is important. Right now, the lighting recommended for the living walls are LED lights compared to metal highlight, and because of the efficiency. All right. Again, this is an example of the exterior versus interior lighting. As you can see at the bottom left corner, this is the same wall that I showed you in the previous image. It's an office space, and the wall has, it's a beautiful wall in one of the real estate offices on Miami Beach in Coldwell Banker office. And the light comes on at 6 p.m. and then it stays on all night, and it serves 2 purposes. It feeds the plants, and at the same time, it creates an attraction to see the pedestrians who are passing by. It's not too far from Lincoln Road. They can see that beautiful wall. On a bigger picture, you see the installation of 2 symmetrical living walls where they have lights not really for the purposes of growing the plants, but just as decorative. You can see they are mounted on the ceiling, and they are facing the wall. Planting design and plant selection. Well, I can be with pride. I can tell you that by now we have tested more than 200 species in the living walls. We came up with the list of top 70, and we have distributed those between like different exposure. So I have interior list, I have exterior list, I have south exposure, east exposure, north and west. So different applications will require different plant selection. This is how we typically approach the task. So we have a planting chart. In the application number 1, which is 3x3 panel, we typically have 64 plants. It's 8x8 grid. And then on application number 2, which is a bigger panel, I didn't mention the size. The panel is 8 feet 3 inch high by 3 feet 3 inch wide. On that panel, we have 96 plants. In the pocket-based system, the plants are spread apart a little bit more because you have to have a pocket. In the application of the first system, the plants are planted much closer and create an immediate finished effect. So let me again show you an example of what jungle look versus manicured look means to us. This is on the left. You see a little picture on the top. That's how the wall looked on the day of installation. And this is how the bottom bigger picture shows how the wall looked in a year. without pruning it. So the client really didn't want to have any manicured living wall, have a jungle. So that's the result. In the case of the right side, you see the top, that's 3 months later, and the bottom is 7 years later. So you can see that we do trim it, so it does have a design. So as I mentioned already, we pre-plant the living walls, and that's how it looks. This is just showing closer how the plants are being pre-planted. So we do cut the moon-shaped pocket in the sponge, and we insert the plant inside. And this is how the pre-planted panels look when they are in the pockets. So this is pretty much a finished product. So this is what is going to be brought to the client. Maintenance. The maintenance is typically involves 3 things. Number 1 is pest control. Number 2 is irrigation equipment check. And number 3 is pruning, trimming, clipping. So obviously, like in any natural installation, there will be debris because of the leaves, drier leaves, some partial replacements, etc. Now I would like to share with you what is the latest trends in the living wall monitoring. So we heavily rely on the system, which is called SPIO. And as you can see on the picture on the left, on the bottom, the person holds in his hand what is called sensor. So it is a device that is being inserted in the living wall, and through that sensor, we're able to monitor moisture, temperature, and light. So any failure of the system due to the third party, electricity, whatever that might be, all of it can be prevented through immediate, timely reaction to changes in the system. And if it's exterior wall, we know that in summer, in summer, the temperature gets higher, so the system uses water a little bit more. So we have to change the criteria. For the indoor applications, what makes a big difference is the air conditioning. So air conditioning dries up the living wall, and definitely we have to monitor what is the moisture inside of the living wall sponge. So to kind of summarize the process of us working on the project is, number 1, we do the site analysis. So to see where the wall is, the size of it, etc., what it's going to be exposed, interior, exterior, condo, house, terrace, you name it. Then we design it, then we pre-plant it. Then when we are ready to install it, there are 2 stages, as I said, hardwire and irrigation setup, and finally bring in the panels with plants. And we concluded with maintenance. We do, by the way, just wanted to mention that both systems are fully transferable. I think this is one of the biggest advantages of using what I have presented, in the fact that tomorrow if the client decides to sell the house and take the living wall with you, yes, he's welcome to do that, because the living wall is fully transferable as a panel. It just has to be reconfigured. And the maintenance wise, one of the questions that you might address is hurricane. What happens in the hurricane? So this is the true historical images of hurricane impact after Irma. You can see debris at the bottom, but as you notice, nothing has been destroyed. Not even a single plant was blown out of the system. You can see the columns also, and those are waterfront. I mean, very, very close, not direct waterfront, but very close to the water projects. For example, the columns are located in Golden Beach. The big installation, the big picture on the bottom is Key Biscayne. The installation on the right is also Key Biscayne, and the top is Wynwood. And I want to show you an alternative of the system, which is soil-based. So how that has been impacted by the hurricane. If you are familiar with the restaurant, which is called Juvia, it's located in Miami, on Miami Beach on Lincoln Road on the 8th floor. That was the initial, the #1 living wall in Miami, installed by famous Patrick Blanc from France. You see the picture of Juvia before hurricane. Our relationship to that wall is, when the wall was installed, it lasted for 3 years and it literally died. So we've been called to modify it, to plant it, and to rejuvenate it, literally. So we did rejuvenate it to the condition that you see on the picture. That's a rejuvenated version of it. However, when Irma hit, and none of our walls were protected in any way, but Juvia has been protected with the net, as you can see on the picture. And still, even with the net, it was ripped off. It was ripped off pretty much like 50%, it was gone. And the difference, again, is because of the soil. The roots simply do not have any way to intervene if the soil dries up, and it's, so the plants just simply cannot catch anything. So they're gone.
Irma, it's Colleen, just so you know. There's 6 minutes left and plenty of questions, so you can go whichever way you choose.
Well, I just want to show just several more pictures and we are done. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. So just to change the colors now, so I want to bring to your attention that we can confidently declare that we have zero failure rate in any installations that we have done since 2013. And I just wanted to show you a couple of examples. So this is West Palm Beach. It all started with one wall, which is just, as you can see, the bottom picture and the top. And then it turned into the entire courtyard. So this is the outcome. And again, there's pretty much nothing to comment. I just want to show you some more examples of the walls and its performance over time. This is example of the shower. So the wall is not really in the shower, but it's in the courtyard, which the person had to face all the time, looking at the ugly wall. The integration of the water feature is also possible. The entryways and the front entrances to the houses. Also, we did a lot of special events, like for the Super Bowl, we did 6 installations, mega big installations. And as you can see, our biggest advantage is it's fully transferable. This is for Verizon. And we've been actually published in the book, which is called Exterior Green Wall Design. So our biggest and the first installation is actually there, as you can see. All right, so thank you so much for your attention. I hope you learned something from this, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
If you look in the chat feature, perhaps you could choose which questions. Sure. There are plenty. If you go straight down where it says chat.
Yeah, I see 9. Yeah, one second.
You probably have a better eye for choosing which questions are more germane.
Sure. 1 second. I'm just trying to pull the, okay, I see. Chat. Okay, let me scroll up. Okay. Okay, I have a couple of questions. What scope is there of wireframe climbers to create green walls on houses across development site? Well, what ecological benefits come from green walls? Okay, so the first question is about wireframe climbers to create green walls on houses. Again, this presentation was specifically addressing the issue of the panel-based living walls. I have not addressed any issues of any trellises. I mean, they are highly used as one of the cost-efficient ways of putting greenery, especially camouflaging type of the camouflaging greenery. The disadvantage of, even though the cost is an advantage, the disadvantage of any vine type of greenery on the trellis is that if for any reason the plant fails, the years and years and years of growth are diminishing to zero right away. In the living wall, what's the advantage of the living wall is that you can replace damaged plant, you can replace damaged panel. But in case of the installation on trellises, if plant dies and it's been growing there for 10 years, it's gone. What ecological benefits come from green walls? A bird bat habitat. Well, this particular, I mean, our experience is that you're absolutely right. There is, when you create a living wall and it becomes a part of the environment, it's sort of an ecosystem for that environment. We personally have not experienced, maybe 7 years is not enough to say that it makes a big difference in terms of attracting those who you want to attract and those or trying to prevent things. Like I had a client who asked, oh, if I put a living wall, will I have more snakes? Or if I have a living wall, will I have more mosquitoes? Of course, the biggest difference, I want to give you confidence on two things. Number one, the hydroponic systems versus any tray-based systems are designed in a way that you do not have any open water source. So everything is sealed within the panel. That's one of the advantages. When I showed you pictures of the tray-based applications where you pretty much have like a container where the water is going to be accumulated, right? And you have a plant growing from it, you definitely, and we did have that issue, remember Zika virus? When we didn't want to do anything with open water containers. So hydroponics do not have open water source. So everything is sealed inside. So that prevents a lot of mosquitoes. Now, and also the plant selection could affect the ecosystem. So there's mosquito repellent plants. There is plants that create certain smell. I mean, we are not at the stage yet to see the difference through our own experience, but definitely the plant selection will affect that. I hope that answered the question. Can green walls make a meaningful contribution to surface water attenuation to elevate flood risk? I honestly don't have an answer to this question. It's I don't know how to answer this question. The fact that it's contributing to the reduction of the heat, but in terms of the flood risk, I think I'm gonna pass this question for now. Okay, I have more questions. Okay, I get a lot of pushback from consultants that full solar exposure, which is the case in most of our project, is not good environment for green walls to grow well, and they will end up dying. How true is this? Oh, great question. Okay, I think I answered that question throughout the presentation. It is all, you're absolutely right. If you have a direct sun exposure walls, which is in most cases south exposure and west exposure, right? You do have less choices for the plant selection. However, it's all doable. We have done south walls, west walls. The answer lies in the plant selection. But the fact that it's successful and it's growing, the example that I showed you, and we can go back to that, of a big wall which is looking like a jungle in a year. That wall is completely open, west exposure, so it does have afternoon heavy strong afternoon sun, and it's lush and beautiful. Okay, all right. Do living wall systems need to have Florida approvals and NOA? In our cases, all the projects that we've been dealing with, the living, we were not requested any specific approvals. And again, our experience was from condo buildings to commercial buildings. So nothing of that nature has been requested from us. As well as I mentioned before, certain jobs, they already have in their plans the irrigation hook and electric supply. So the only thing for the living wall to work is we need electric source and water source. And as I mentioned, if we don't have direct water source, then we will figure it out through the water tank. So it's literally can be resolved in any situation. I would assume that the question might arise if you have a high rise and you want to build a big installation on the wall, and you need to know all the weight and everything like that. That's probably where the question would be. Great presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, will you share it via email? Okay, will I share this presentation via email after the meeting? I'll be more than happy to give you a copy of this presentation in the PDF format. So I think we can arrange it through the mailing list that we get as a result of this presentation. Okay. Next. Do these walls need a lifetime plant care from the agency, or the client can do the work alone? Yes, excellent question. Okay, the answer is simple. We believe that living wall requires specialized knowledge, and therefore we do provide full service, meaning that if we are contracted, we are one-stop shop and we'll take care of it, and we do want to take care of it. And that's why I'm surprised when people actually go for a living wall, but they still don't know who's gonna take care of it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, I would not trust, or I would highly recommend to question any offers which tells that the living does not require the maintenance. Please, please, please don't be confused by two things. Number one is somebody tells you my living wall has a warranty of 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. That simply means that the warranty is only for the plastic. The warranty is for the actual system. But the question is how long the plants are gonna live. That's the most critical. When you start seeing that this corner dies and this corner is dead, and of course you will not be happy to see that on an everyday basis, you do have to maintain the wall. So it's all coming back to what system you are using. In terms of taking care on its own, we found a solution, an optimum solution for the client, where we can offer pretty much three alternatives. So alternative number one is a monthly care. Most of our clients prefer the monthly plan, where it's a fixed rate, and at the fixed rate, we simply take the entire risk. We are confident in taking that risk. So fixed rate allows us to include all necessary plant replacements within that monthly rate. And then as we progress, we certainly reduce our liability. So if we offer bi-monthly, then the cost is on you. And then upon your request, it's when we have to do the assessment every time we come, and we determine what needs to be done and how much plants needs to be replaced. But so far it's been efficient to do every month or every other month. That is very sufficient for this climate. All right, a few more. So are north-facing walls ideal for these walls? What is the average price, and what is the average maintenance cost? Okay, great question, and this is great conclusion, right? So the pricing. And thank you so much for magnificent comment in the bottom one. Excellent, thank you so much. All right, so the prices are very, very simple to share. Depending on the size, of course, it gets cheaper per square foot if it's a bigger project, simply because there is a fixed component of the irrigation component. So no matter if I do 5 square feet or 5,000 square feet, I still need to have irrigation set, and it doesn't vary depending on the price. So, but for the ease of calculations and feasibility studies, you can safely use two numbers. So for the first system, which is a panel-based system 3x3, which we consider our premium product, okay, and we primarily recommend it for interior installations because it's clean, it doesn't have any smell, it doesn't, nothing rots, no dirt, nothing is open, etc. That application is $180 a square foot for the turnkey installation. This is something that I also want to emphasize, that in some cases, when you price your project, sometimes they do not include certain things. Then you are running into headaches finding additional suppliers of plants and irrigation and piping, etc. So in our case, it's a turnkey price, $180 a square foot. The application, which is a pocket-based application, system number 2, can go as low as $90 a square foot turnkey. And the maintenance cost. Maintenance cost depends on 3 things. Number 1 is accessibility to the living wall. For example, if we can easily drive into the property and put our ladder and nothing else needs to be done, that definitely affects the price. But on general, again, general terms, the highest number that you can project is $18 a year per square foot. $18 a year per square foot. That's for monthly visit, based on a monthly service. As I mentioned, we are confident to even do it every other month. And of course, then you cut the rate, divided it, annual divided instead of 12, you divide it by 6. And, I mean, we are reducing it. Half of it is going to be the final cost. But all of those individual questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. You can send me so dimensions to price. I'll be more than happy to do so. And I just, as you can see on the screen, this is our contact information. On behalf of myself and my business partner, Victor Franco, I would like to thank you all for taking your time and spending this time learning something that I hope will benefit you, and you can have confidence presenting this information to your client. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for attending. And when you registered, if you wanted credit for this LUs for this webinar, you need to have left your AR number and your AIA number. So if you don't have those, please email those to Colleen at AIAmiami.org. And thank you all for coming.
Colleen, there's one more question. Can I answer it?
Yeah, but we got to turn this off.
Just one more. Yeah,
Go for it.
Yeah, it says, last question, most of your pictures are the walls like 10 feet high. Can these walls span various stories, like 50? Yes, it can span various stories. The weight of the panels allowed to do so. So it's all doable, any height, any size. Thank you so much for great comments. It's great to hear this feedback. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.